I think this is an extremely good question. Personally, and I'm actually on YouTube on this because I've said this before, banks really eventually will increasingly have to hyperscale themselves, and which is why you're seeing consolidation. And eventually, should a cryptocurrency ever become a fiat currency, now I'm talking about a fiat currency, which means regulated currency, then technically there is really no need for banks, and you can actually, through the right technology, you can actually have a trust-based system, and you can deal with each other, and the central banks of respective countries will serve as the exchange mechanism. Will that happen? I think it definitely will. Does it need to happen? There are reasons very different from taking away banks. And, by the way, what I say for banks is going to happen even in other industries. And if you give me a minute, firstly, remember the trend that happened many years ago, especially after 2008 and also in 2001, etc. Every time there's been a problem, regulators have thrown stimulus behind. Now, stimulus is now like candy, which cannot be pulled out. Every time, even Bernanke tried to pull it out in 2013, or in came Janet Yellen tried to do it in 2013 and 2018, Janet Yellen. It didn't work. Market's not willing to accept it. If all your life you lived on candy, try pulling candy away and you'll have a depression. So one thing for sure, that stimulus will remain. And I've been saying this since 2012. And when stimulus remains, you must realize that eventually we're reaching a stage when interest rates are going to be, we are in a very long period of slow growth. And if you're in a long period of slow growth, interest rates can only be depressed up to a point. This time around, when we had the crisis in COVID, in 17 days, the regulators unleashed everything that took months for them to do in the 2008 crisis. Whether it was quantitative easing, interest rate guidance, interest rate reduction, and everything else, swap lines, and everything else that was done. Now, if that is the criteria they're going to use again next time, every time you do that, the traction that you get, the benefit that you transmit out of it is getting progressively lower. Eventually, we are going to move into interest rates which are negative, which we've already started seeing in Europe. And for that to happen, and to make sure that people don't start keeping physical cash or don't move it to alternates like Bitcoin, now that transaction you have to start looking at correlating. Many of these sound bizarre. I personally, but I think this is leading to whether it's Bitcoin, stablecoin, iCoin, or whatever comes in, there will come a time where cryptocurrencies will have to survive, because digital currency, fiat, will lead to negative interest rates. That's the only hope. Otherwise, people will keep physical cash in vaults or keep it under their bed. Final thing I want to say, all industries and banks especially have to unbundle. And when technology comes in or technologists or fintechs come in as insurgents, right? They're like the termite that comes in. They have learned your business models because historically all businesses have given their businesses to them. So big tech has actually got businesses and made systems for technology, just like the developed markets had it from emerging markets. They have learned the business. And now you're getting neo banks, you're getting open banking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So unbundling of banks is leading to back offices getting hyperscale, whether it's a retail business, whether it's Amazon, whether it's anything else. And network-based businesses will start becoming monopolistic on the other side. As they get unbundled, anything which is high customer impact and low level of standardization, which is structuring, credits, processes, intellectual capital, or relational capital. So, we talked about wisdom in the first presentation. That becomes proprietary. But anything which is data entry, managing systems, data centers, these need to now become consolidated, hyperscaled, and move into infrastructure and railroads. So you are going to see regulation as a structure. As a service. You're going to see compliance as a service. You'll see software as a service. You've been seeing it, etc. But if there are 2-3 things I would focus on going forward, and as I said, longevity, because I think it's important, but compliance, integrity. These are going to have such elements of who gets capital, who doesn't. You're seeing Larry Fink and his BlackRock model. What is happening? ESG is not a fad. ESG, by the way, I printed my first sustainability report in the Middle East in 2009, and every year I was doing sustainability for years. So when people talk about ESG today as a new fad, it surprises me. It's what matters is integrity cannot be compromised any further. Regulators have to be respected, but regulators sets the minimum norm. You have to decide your higher norm. What is you have to be better than norm. It's like what we are taught at home. So companies that perform well will get better multiples. Companies that will be relevant and closest to the client and be customer-centric and own relational capital and intellectual capital will make sense. Anything which is rule-based needs to go down to hyperscaled entities, which are going to be taken over by the big techs or taken over by the specialists. And so we must all look at our businesses and start segregating our businesses and unbundling. Otherwise, we'll be dinosaurs who will be killed if we don't unbundle ourselves. So banks are very much in it. New banks are already happening, and regulators are already setting up regulations. Open banking is there everywhere, and it's a matter of time that banks will lose their advantage. Or even if they stay, remember, the economic returns will be taken away by the frontline defenses, and the normal profit will remain. So we have CAs on this line. If you only earn normal profit and don't make the economic return on economic capital, you're not creating value. It ain't happening. So
thanks, Rajeev. Just one maybe leading point on this. So as you rightly pointed out, the factors on the banking side, I think in the global world, if we see, the biggest issues are two. One is multiple currencies and multiple taxation. So if the transformation happens with a single currency globally, it's by default happening. I think regulators are also losing a grip on that somewhere in some fashion. And the global single taxation.
I don't think you'll have a single currency. You may have cryptocurrency, but currencies will remain country specific. I'm worried. I think money markets are going to divide. I think there'll be a China market, so capital market will no longer be the preserve of the US. I'm worried about neutrality of the internet. I'm worried about internet starting to get governed. Please remember, there are three pillars in any community. There's business, there's government. If businesses become very large, like Jack Ma happened recently, you get slammed on the wrist. We saw that in Bill Gates in Europe many years ago when there was the antitrust movement. There's digital tax hitting Google. So behavior is what I was talking about, is very important. Arbitrage will always exist. Countries will always defend their arbitrage, whether it's tax or it's other benefits that they will give. And for that, there will be treaties. For that, there will be sanctions. For that, there will be new alliances. Unfortunately, if we did not have politics and we did not have borders, then frankly, technology would rule the world. But that's how you start protecting it. And the third pillar is civil society, and which is us. I think we have a responsibility. And today, social media has weaponized information sharing and the speed at which it can share to such an extent that not only can it be used negatively to affect you through fake media, but on the other side has given a lot of power to people, like you're seeing with the farmers, good or bad, which can take governments down and can look at it. So I think we have three convergent forces working together. We as business people have to be very smart and look forward and make sure that you handle it well. So many CEOs have toppled. Wells Fargo CEO toppled. You saw what happened in the BP oil spill. He went sailing, poor guy, and it happened. How you're behaving, how you're talking is going to be measured. And a little action, like you saw Ted Cruz right now walk away from Dallas in the middle of the Texas storm. He just went for a holiday to Mexico. He's been beaten up. He had to come back in a half. So you're being watched. And so companies are being watched. And which is why I keep coming back to your purpose, your culture, and your talent. Invest today on talent. Do not optimize. Last line I do want to say, and I said this when the last time I spoke to ICAI. The accounting profession capitalizes systems, desks, and furniture, but expenses the salary cost of the true capital in a company, which is the human capital. So the fact that we expense salaries and we capitalize desks and doors and premises is the first problem of how we, now I'm not talking about accounting, about how we recognize the value of talent. Talent is the true capital. So whether you account for it one way or the other, do not lose your people. Constantly create them, upskill them if you can. Otherwise, in the modern world, it's no longer reskilling. It's upskilling if they are upskillable. Otherwise, hire. You have to be ruthless and get the best person to do so. And the others, gig and inclusion will take care of the rest.